So after the speaking activity is over, you want to focus. You want your students to focus on language skills and strategies. So during stage 4, you want to improve their accuracy, and this is what we call moving from fluency to accuracy. What happens during this stage follows. First of all, you want to help them to acquire appropriate vocabulary and accurate language form, which is relevant to the speaking needs of the task that they have just finished. Learn a range of core speaking skills, and by skills here I mean pronunciation, for example, that's phonology, and social and linguistic conventions of speech for particular contexts. I have given examples before, like if you speak with your professor versus if you speak with your friends or your parents, etc. So you need to use different kinds of language there. And then learn the structure of genre. Genre refers to a kind of oral genre rather than written genre. And there is a lot more research attention that's been paid to written genre. And unfortunately, there's not as much literature on oral communication genres, but there is some good literature. I'll try to make another video very soon in one of the following weeks to talk about oral genres and the type of macrostructure and microstructures they have. They also need to learn how to use discourse markers, and this adds to the complexity of the language they produce. A discourse marker, as I have mentioned before, is a word or a phrase that plays an important role in managing the flow of the structure of the discourse. There are different types of discourse markers. You can list them in different ways, but some of them are used for conveying the sense of place or where. For example, I don't know where I have placed my pencil. So where here refers to place, and the fact that you are using where in this sentence indicates that you are creating a more complex sentence. Some of these discourse markers convey a sense of timing, sometimes a sense of similarity, something like likewise or similarly. On the other hand, some of them are used to convey contrasts in ideas or contrast in some feature or facet, something like by contrast, on the other hand, or however, nevertheless. Sometimes they present additional or supplementary ideas, right? Something like in addition. So I'm going to talk about this. In addition, I will talk about something else. That's about supplementing new ideas. And things like when you're demonstrating a sense of logical sequence, like by using words like first, second, third, etc., or when you're offering an illustration or providing an example, something that I assume I have used several times so far. For example, for instance, or as a case in point. And finally, to deliver a summary of ideas that you have discussed. Things like in conclusion, or in sum, or all in all. You also need to raise the awareness about the level of formality of some of these phrases and words. Something like all in all does not usually happen in very formal discourse, of course if it's written discourse, but something like in sum, in summary, or to conclude is probably more appropriate for more formal discourse. Therefore, during this stage, we need to, and I go back to the third bullet point there, we need to help them to understand social and linguistic conventions, one of which is the level of formality of the language and those discourse markers that they use. Next is to employ appropriate oral communication strategies here. One of the things that we need to remember is, although using oral communication strategies is important and students should be equipped with that knowledge, we should remind them that using an oral communication strategy often indicates that there is a lack. Because if we use, for example, approximation, or something like appealing to the interlocutor for helping us to convey the meaning to them and things like that. It indicates that there is a lack in our knowledge and we want the other interlocutor to help us to fill in the gap, or we are using some kind of smart trick to prevent the communication from breaking down. Well, that's good. However, they should also be reminded that they need to fill in the gap during this stage. If you didn't know a word, or if you didn't know the exact or the precise way of expressing some concepts, stage 4 is the right stage in which they need to fill in the gap in knowledge and be prepared for stage 5, where they start to reiterate the task again. Finally, you can play good samples of speech for them, so they will learn how successful interlocutors or successful speakers deliver their speech on that particular topic. So the sample should be related to the topic that they are discussing. Since nowadays every student probably has a cell phone or some kind of gadget, maybe a laptop or a tablet or something, you can actually ask them to look for a good speech sample or a good sample of a conversation and watch it maybe before coming to the class, or even inside the class. You can give them a few minutes to watch something, so that will be a kind of a good model for them to follow. In addition, you could also provide some kind of model which is not up to the mark, meaning that you would want to create a contrast between good samples and samples which are not really efficient or very well done. So the students will get an idea and get a sense for what is high-level performance and what is a performance which is not as good. Stage 5 is the repetition of the task. During this stage, because they get a chance to repeat whatever they have done before, they also get a chance to practice their core speaking skills, they practice oral communication strategies if they need that, and most importantly, produce a wide range of utterances to express meanings more precisely. Like I said, if they had relied on a lot of communication strategies during stage 3, during stage 5 they use, because you have also provided them with feedback and the language that they need during stage 4, in this stage they become more precise and express meaning in a more precise fashion. In this stage, one of the aims is to facilitate automaticity. And that's actually analogous to fluency, because you want them to speak fluently and use the skills that they have acquired automatically. Once they see that they can do this fluently and accurately, and you encourage them, well, that will be a kind of boost of confidence for them. That's what I mean by enhancing their effect. So another attribute or another feature of this stage is that they'll get a chance to revise their earlier performance without interruption, which means that they're practicing fluency. Now, the question is, do they have to repeat the same task again fully, or could it be partially? I would say it could be either fully or partially. I would say for those students who are not very well, who are not at an advanced level of learning, you might want to engage them in exactly the same thing again. That's the full repetition of what they have done. But if you think that they have already reached a level where they can be challenged a little bit more, in other words, if they're advanced students, you can go by the formula that Krashen proposed a few decades ago. He referred to it as I plus 1, and I would like to add I plus 1, input plus 1, meaning to engage them in a task which is only partially repetitive and therefore is slightly more challenging than the previous task which they performed during stage 3. As an example, if you engage them in, let's say, a speaking task about something, this time round you can also ask them to watch something, to watch a video, and to combine what they said previously with the ideas of the person or people who are speaking in the video in order to engage them in a kind of synthesis of ideas, which is more challenging.